Okay, skeletal system. Here we go. Uh, it is your bones, right? That's the organs of the skeletal system. And these bones, they protect your organs. They support your muscles, and they give a place for your organs to hang on to. Um, so they protect it one way by forming the cavities, the cranial cavity, the vertebral cavity, the thoracic cavity, and such. They protect all of these vital organs and such. But they also produce your white blood cells, which go in play in your immune system to help protect that way. And they produce the platelets, which keep your blood, it clots your blood so you don't bleed to death if you get cut or whatever. So it does protect in a couple of different ways. It helps you move. These bones form levers, and there's a PowerPoint that you can look at and follow, and it's about levers, and levers come in first, second, and third classes and all, and it's about where the resistance is located to the force, between the force and the fulcrum, or after the force and the, so you'd have to look at that. There's first, second, and third. The weakest of the levers is the third class. The majority of the levers in your body are third class. The reason for that, they're faster. Human beings gave up strength. Primates and such gave up strength for speed. And so we're able to move our arms and such faster than some other counterpart that might have a second class lever and get more strength out of it. Now, you have second class levers found in your body in a few areas, and even a first class and such found. So, but you can look into that. Your bones produce blood. This word is homeopoiesis. There's different type of hormones that are associated with this, which trigger the blood cell production, but it's for both red blood cells and white blood cells and platelets and all. So your bones store minerals. Calcium is a main mineral. You need blood calcium levels at a certain range, and your body will homeostatically deposit calcium and take calcium up. It'll lay it down into the bones and it'll take it up, because your bones are living organs, and they're constantly being remanufactured, remodeled, if you will. So, but your bones are a storehouse for these things. Now, the types of cells that are found in the bone, you have this one called an osteoprogenitor, which is a stem cell, which can become any type of bone cell, an osteoblast, a chondrocyte, whatever. So it can become any one of these types of bone cells and such. So if the hormones, the DNA and such gets turned on and they become an osteoblast, the osteoblast is the actual type of cell that produces bone. It lays bone down. And it does it in the ring-like structures that we'll call the osteons or the Haversians and such. Now, once those osteoblasts are encapsulated in their lacuna, and then they become more of a mature bone cell, so they call them an osteocyte and such. They're still growing, they're still laying calcium down, taking calcium up, things like that. But that's their function now. So where do these osteoprogenitors come from? If you follow it all the way back to the embryo, and you go back to the blastula and such, you'll see that they have this germ line of these mesenchyme or mesodermal types of cells and such. So they can become, these osteoprogenitors can become adipose, which is the yellow marrow. They can become the chondroblast, which is the hyaline cartilage and other forms of cartilage and such. They can become the fibroblasts, which produce the types of fibers, elastic fibers, collagen fibers, reticular fibers, and such. So they can modify, they can do all these things, and it's in response to stimuli, stressors, and such. What the skeletal system is undergoing at the time, what the body is undergoing at the time, is what triggers them or pushes them to become what type of cell is needed. Other types of cells, we mentioned the osteoblasts, the bone-forming ones and such. They do communicate with one another and all through there. We mentioned the mature ones, the osteocytes. They help maintain the matrix, the calcium, the phosphate, and such. So they can break down bone. They can lay down bone. They live within that little space known as a lacuna. And also, other types, osteoclast. This is a type of cell that will chew up bone. They dissolve the matrix. They use special enzymes and they will break that down and pull that out. These have a different germline or pathway than an osteoblast or an osteocyte does and such. So these are more attuned to white blood cells. So they have a pathway, a lineage more in line with white blood cells than they do with other bone cells. So some of the tissues, just the bone tissue itself, it's just bone proper, right? Cells in a matrix. The matrix is these inorganic salts, the calcium, the phosphates, and the fibers, the collagens, and such like that. I can't pronounce that word, hydroxyapatite. I pronounce it that way so I can spell it. I don't believe that's the correct pronunciation. So, but that's the air quotes concrete of the bone right there. That's the calcium and phosphate right there that gets laid down. That's the non-living, the inorganic matrix of the bone. So the collagen fibers, that's the rebarb of the concrete. These are organic fibers that actually give a strength, a tensile strength to the bone. Bones are not rigid like rocks. Bones can bend, kind of like tree trunks and such. They can bend and all. And it helps them, protects them from breaking. They will break and such, but it kind of gives them a protection in that aspect. Bone has kind of two flavors, compact and spongy, so we call that compact cortical bone. It's in the outside, the cortex of the organ and such. So, and it's arranged in these ring-like structures right there. Those are the osteons. It has that central canal, the osteonic canal. The older name is Haversian. That's the older name of these systems. So, but it's found in areas where you're going to have like the type of compression types of forces and such. So in the shaft, in the diaphysis of the bones, and all the bones have this compact bone around their outer layer. So you can see on this sagittal view of the femur, they're showing you where the compact bone is found. It's found all the way around and such. And then the cancellous, or the spongy bone, is found within the ends, the proximal or distal ends of these bones. And it's in the spaces created by the spongy bone that the red bone marrow is located in all. When you look at this spongy bone, you'll notice it's made up of little bitty thin tubes. In the center of each one of these tubes, there's capillaries. But that little bitty tube, you see they're going in all kinds of different directions and such, that's known as a spicule. And so you get all these spicules and such. And it gives it this crossbar, kind of like the monkey bars when you were a kid, the crossbars and such. And that crossbar, the word for that is tuberculate. And so when you look and you see these bars going in and out, crisscrossing through the space, that's the tuberculate. So you're going to see that word tuberculate a lot through the anatomy course. So, and it's the space between these where the red bone marrow is found. So we mentioned red bone marrow, and I mentioned fat a while ago. Yellow marrow is fat. So blood producing, myeloid tissue is blood producing, and it's found within the spongy bone. So it's this hematopoietic tissue, which will undergo the process of hematopoiesis, which is the production of blood. So if it's red blood cells, it's erythropoiesis, and if it's white blood cells, it's leukopoiesis. So red marrow and such, it doesn't increase in proportion to bone growth. So you have all this marrow that you're going to have. And even though you might get larger and your bones might get a little bit bigger, most of the time, if everything's okay, that red will actually convert to yellow, to fat and such. So the yellow marrow, mostly fat. If you had a major incident and if you lost blood, that's a stress. That's a hematopoietic stress. That can trigger, with hormones being released by the kidneys and other areas and such, can trigger this yellow marrow to revert or to become red marrow again, and then pick up producing more blood cells to replace the blood that was lost. On the outside of the bones, there's a membrane. On the inside of the cavity, there's a membrane. The outside of the membrane is known as the periosteum, perimeter on the outside and such. It is a dense connective tissue, and you read there it says it connects to tendons. The tendon is actually the same dense connective tissue. It's just the form that this dense connective tissue takes. It either forms a sac around the bone, you call it the periosteum. It forms a cable to the next bone, you call it a ligament. It forms a cable to form a sac that holds the muscle, then you call it a tendon. And also, but it's the same tissue and all. Within the inner layer is where the osteoprogenitor cells are found and such. And when the right stresses are added, when you walk, when you lift things, use muscles, that's a stressor. It triggers these progenitor cells to become what you're asking them to become. And if you stress the bone, you need more bone, they become osteoblast and all. So where the tendons come in, or where the ligaments come into the periosteum, where it enters into around the bone, it actually anchors deeper. It goes at a right angle into the bone and such. And those fibers that do that are known as the Sharpey's fibers and all. I did mention that there is a membrane on the inside of the medullary cavity. Your bones are organs, and in the body, when you think about organs, you have hollow organs and solid organs. And you have to consider the bone to be a solid organ, even though it's hollow. You got to think of solid organs, so that the outside of this organ is known as a cortex, the outer layers, and the inside is known as the medulla. You'll see that on the thymus, you'll see it on the kidney, you'll see it on the spleen. Solid organs, the outside is the cortex, the inside is the medulla. So in bones, because when they went from a cartilage model to a bone, the inner cavity of the medulla was actually hollowed out. So they call it a medullary cavity and such. And it does have a lining. It does have a membranous lining and such, and that's the endosteum. So it is also containing osteoprogenitor cells. So in a minute, we're going to talk about how bone cells are produced. There's two ways, through a cartilage model or through a membrane. And this is the neat thing. All the bones are in between membranes, but don't let that throw you off. So the medullary cavity is this central cavity of the long bone, and all of your long bones have this. Remember, long bones are not based, you don't name them that based off of their physical length. It's the characteristics that they have. So having this cavity does make our bones lighter, and it is where we will store yellow marrow and such in the fat. So, okay, let's stop there.